I'm taking the team total. I'm taking first quarter, first half, full game, taking it all. OU all the way. I lost so much money on OU.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. Cast starts all crazy.
And they run through our ass like shit through a tin horn, man.
That is a disgusting act by Randy Moss.
What's up and welcome to Not Another CFB pod. This is the week 5 college football, week 4 NFL review show. We just had a massive weekend. I know for my bets, I think I went like 3-3 on my college football, and then I went like 1-1 on NFL, but the one winner I had was a big Titans money line hit, which was awesome. But let's hear about how our guy Coda Capper Beast did this weekend. That's right, new Twitter handle. What's going on, man?
There you go. Yeah, we had to kind of unleash the new Twitter handle. A little change, but we're still, same bets, same content, everything. But, wasn't my best week. I want to say same thing. I went 3-3 on Saturday with college football. In total on NFL, I think I was 2-3. So a down week. We can't, come out every week and just dominate the slate. But, we'll be back next week.
Yeah, that's right. We'll be back. And I hate it because if my pick for the our pod parlay would have hit, we hit the third pod parlay in a row, and then both our days are drastically different. But Kent State came out a little slow out of the gates. They were, they won in overtime, but it wasn't enough to cover the 11.5, obviously. So at least they pulled out the win. It feels so bad when you take a big favorite like that and they just completely lose altogether. That's brutal.
Yeah, it's always a weird feeling. MAC games are kind of like that, unfortunately.
Yes.
Sometimes, I feel like every time I think I have a good read on the MAC, and I've hit a couple plays on the MAC in a row, a play like that comes out of the woodworks where I'm just like, maybe I don't know anything about this league, you know what I mean? And they'll do that. So sometimes, that's just how the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. But we'll be back. I know we got a pod parlay next week that's going to win. So
absolutely. And I'm pulling up next week's schedule because you mentioned MAC, and I believe I remember, yes, we do have some games this week. No, we don't. I'm lying. But we do have that weird Wednesday matchup where it's SMU at UCF in college. They moved that because of the hurricane. I think each team had like a bye week, so they could just kind of put it in the middle of the week. So we do have some Wednesday night football this week, so that's nice. But I thought someone said Maction was starting up, midweek Maction, but I know they like to wait a little later in the year. But let's get right into it. Let's talk about the college football slate first. We'll talk about the NFL slate next. And then we'll go ahead and do our one big take. It's been a big hit with the show. Thought that was going well. I got to get this out of the way, though, first. My Oklahoma Sooners on Saturday morning got absolutely blown out of Fort Worth, 55-24. Dylan Gabriel gets a nasty, dirty hit. He's knocked out of the game. And, it was already going poorly, but that made it go that much worse. We had another really devastating injury late in that game, too, where it was a guy that I don't know if it was a neck injury or a head injury of some kind, but he was on the field for a very long time. So it just kind of put a really bad mood on my Saturday. My Saturday was really tough to get out of the mud. I was feeling bad for myself. OU got smacked everywhere. I put out a little Twitter video, and if you really want to know my feelings, that came out. But basically, I just felt like every position group played bad, got outplayed, and they got smoked by TCU, who I think is a good football team. Maybe we should just start there. TCU's pretty darn good, 4-0.
Yeah, no, I'm really impressed with TCU right now. Our guy Max Duggan, I feel like every year since his freshman year, I've been kind of waiting for it to all come together. Yeah. And he seems like he's got it all together right now. I think this is like the third week in a row where he's really balled out. But on the other hand, it's unfortunate. You're right. Took the wins right out of your sails on OU.
Yeah.
That was a team, obviously, we were high on, but sometimes it's early in the season. We kind of get, a different look at a team, but we'll see. The season's not over. OU can still make a good bowl. They just got to really rebound here, and they'll just have to start stacking some wins. But
yeah, going to be tough too. They play Texas in Dallas next week for the Red River Shootout. We'll talk about that more on Thursday. Let's get into this full slate. Thursday night, we had a couple big results. BYU beats Utah State, but I don't think they covered, if I remember right. 38-26 for BYU. I think the number was higher than that. We had South Carolina State, and this is one that I kicked myself because I knew how bad South Carolina State was, and even though South Carolina is not good, they win this game 50-10. South Carolina State just can't cover. and I should have been all over this, and I even said it in the chat, but I think I forgot to take it. Unfortunate, but nothing big there. Let's move on to Friday. UCLA, Washington, man. Our guy, Michael Penix, he wins it 40-32. Huge Pac-12 game. I mean, the Pac-12's deep, man. UCLA looked awesome.
Yeah, no, I really like UCLA. I don't know if they're going to have enough to obviously, pull it off in the Pac-12. Same thing goes for Washington, at that point. But I'm still so high on Utah, even though they had the week 1 loss, and I was really impressed with what they did this week. But you have to watch that Friday night game and think both those teams, I feel like, will still be players. Like, they could upset USC, they could upset Utah. So Pac-12 is wide open, and it's a lot better conference than I think we all expected going in. And we've talked about that for a couple weeks now, but they're proving it right now.
That was my one big take from last week. For those that remember the show 7 days ago, Tuesday morning, I did want to say though, and I lost it. I don't know what I was going to say. It could have been anything. It could have been the smartest thing in the world. Oh, I remember what it was. Okay. So this year, the Pac-12 and the ACC is going to do this next year, but the Pac-12, while it still does have sort of division schedules, it's going to be the top 2 teams. It's not going to be one from the North, one from the South, or however they, would have named the divisions. It's just the top 2 teams. So, as open as it is, any of these 2 teams could still emerge. It's the first loss of the Pac-12 play and overall for Washington. So they'll be just fine, but very deep conference, as we said. Tulane and Houston also went down that Thursday night. Very interesting result. Tulane pulls it off in OT 27-24. Crazy game. I had the under, and that was never in doubt, really. It got a little hairy, I guess, in OT, you can say, but a good win for Tulane. And Houston sitting here 2-3, and I can't believe it, man. I really thought this was one of those dark horse, our G6, a group of 6 kind of runner at the playoff potentially, just like since he did last year. But Houston just hasn't come together. I don't know what to think. Is Dana Holgorsen just out? Like, what are we doing?
Right. It's been an underwhelming season. I thought Clayton Tune was like the guy. He, kind of carry them. And I wouldn't say necessarily Tune's been bad, but just the whole team hasn't meshed like we were kind of expecting. And you're right. This was a team that a lot of people had to win the American, and they're 2-3 right now. And I feel like Cincinnati could beat them. Like, there's a couple teams that might be able to upset them. It's just not what we expected, but hey, maybe they'll turn it around, but 2-3 is not at all what I expected. I thought 3-1 at worst. You know what I mean?
Same here. Yeah. And Tune had some really good numbers. You're right. But for whatever reason, they just haven't totally clicked. I had the UTSA Middle Tennessee over. This is in the weeds. That was literally my in the weeds play. It covered easy, 45-30 UTSA, the winner there. Very no sweat over to start the week off. And I thought it was great. Then on Saturday, I even started 2-0, and I was like, okay, let's go. And then the rest was history. But then we had a huge result we got to talk about. Georgia does end up coming back against Missouri, 26-22. But I need to know, because I ranked Bama number 1, and I think that's where they're at in the AP this week. What do we think about Georgia after this one? Is it just a one-off, kind of a weird place to play in Missouri, or is that kind of like maybe a glimpse into how you beat Georgia?
Right. I feel like last year, when we watched Georgia, and, almost every year when we watch teams like Bama, when you see like these unanimous number 1s or number 2s, like typically they don't struggle in these games. These are the games that you go and you kind of take care of business. So it's like if they came out like they did last week against, I don't know, like anybody in the SEC, Tennessee, Florida, like Kentucky, Ole Miss, like so many teams probably could have upset them in that spot. And they were having all kinds of red zone issues. And that was one of those games where it was like, I kind of, I tuned in for the first half, here and there, but I thought it was going to be such a blowout that for the second half, like I was out with some of my buddies, and my one buddy he keeps updating me. He's like, dude, like Georgia's still losing. Like they're kind of coming back now, but like they're still losing. He's like, I think we should jump on the live money line. And I'm like, the last thing I want to do is jump on the live money line at like a steep price, because it was still like it was like minus 300, and I'm like, I don't know. I was like, the last thing I want to do is jump on it, and then some crazy stuff happens. But we just kept looking, and finally they kind of got it together. But lots of red zone issues, which is something that scares me because
Mhm.
that can't happen in SEC competition.
They really struggle to run the ball, which is kind of interesting because Mizzou's nothing special. I mean, they're 0-2 in the
No.
SEC, 2-3 on the year. Not to hate on them because I know that's our guy Randy Vision's team, so I don't want to hate on them.
Yeah.
Brutal season for them. They really could be 2-0 in the SEC right now. And if our Kansas Jayhawks are still undefeated and Mizzou is like what would they be 3-1 in that case or
Right.
4-1? I mean, what are we
Right.
doing? Like
I don't
anyway,
know, man.
we should fit it in there. Our Kansas Jayhawks did beat Iowa State. Believe the final score. Yeah, here it is. 11-14. Iowa State missed a game-tying field goal at the end.
Yeah.
Very ugly game. This is the first time we saw Kansas's offense really get stopped, but 14 was enough to do it. Their defense found a way against, a very hyped, at least coming into the year, Iowa State offense. So great win for the Jayhawks, and they're finally ranked, man. They did it.
Yeah. No, I mean, boys keep getting wins. You can't deny it. W's are W's, like whether it's by 2 scores or whether it's by 14-11, kind of ugly game. A win's a win. I would take it right now for, my Michigan State Spartans. I would take
too.
anything I could get right now.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Our teams are just not where we wanted to be in college right now. We are absolutely falling off. Not great. Did you want to talk about the Spartans game from this weekend?
Yeah, I mean
It's going to be like the same breakdown you've given the last 2 weeks.
Really, dude, literally, like I was like, it's just going to be a broken record. That was a game that I was like, well, maybe they'll be able to move the ball on Maryland. And like they did move the ball, but like their defense is just so bad. Like I can't decide what's worse, the Detroit Lions defense or the Michigan State Spartans defense, because both teams I root for just don't have any defense at all. So yeah, it was bad. I didn't think it was as bad as it could have been, but like they didn't look good. So we'll see. This week against Ohio State's going to be a bloodbath, dude.
Oh,
like,
I didn't even know they were playing them this week.
It's literally like if anybody's just watching that game, it's going to be over by the first quarter, probably.
What is Ohio State's team total going to be? Because they did go ahead and beat Rutgers 49-10, and we have to talk about it. The coach is almost getting in a fight. Can you kind of explain that whole situation?
No, I mean, like, I have no idea, like, what was being said, but you're right. Like, it almost turned into, like, a brawl. I mean, it would have been, like, good content for us, but, like, I have no idea what actually happened. Like, maybe, like, somebody out there has, like, a dialogue of, like, things that might have been said. Yeah. I was just like, what in the world? You're right. I saw the highlight, and I'm like, what?
Well, I think Ryan Day just took offense because Greg Schiano ended up all the way over basically on his sideline, and coaches hate when other coaches do stuff like that. But I was surprised Ryan Day did not back down. I kind of took him as the kind of guy that backs down from things like that, but he was all about it.
Right.
That's the literal term of Ryan Day wanted all the smoke this weekend.
Dude, he wanted all the smoke. He wanted that smoke. And I'm sure the players got to love it, so maybe not a great honestly, spot for the Michigan State Spartans this weekend.
Yeah.
And team's going to be fired up.
Yeah. And my guy, it's a tough place to be. And I'm guessing that's in Columbus.
No. So it's in East Lansing. I almost thought about going to the game. Like me and our guy VFC were going to get tickets to that game. I got a feeling I would just rather tailgate than sit inside that stadium, because like I don't even know if they sell alcohol inside Spartan Stadium now. They're trying to, but I don't know if they have yet. So like just sitting there, like watching my team just get like absolutely demolished doesn't sound like a fun time. And tickets are probably like $80 because it's like a
Ohio
top
State
5
fans.
team, but we'll see. Be fun to tailgate, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Let's stick in the Big Ten then before we get into Bama, which I want to talk about. But Michigan beating Iowa 27-14. That's a cover.
Yep.
A little bit of an ugly game, but this was kind of one of those tests that we wanted to see Michigan pass. We know Iowa does have a good defense. We're not going to sit here and brag about their offense, but their defense can really play. So this was a pretty good win for Michigan, but not one that you're like, oh, okay, so they might win the Natty. It was just like, oh, good. They're legit enough to give Ohio State some problems. We'll see.
Right. I mean, like, no matter what, like, I don't care who you are, like, and what Iowa's done this year, everybody's probably going to acknowledge, oh, they lost Iowa State. Like, it's a tough place to play. Like, nobody enjoys traveling, on the road to Iowa. That's a tough place to play. And, like, the fans showed up. It was a very, very tough environment. Michigan played well. It was a closer game than probably, like, the box score shows, because there's a late touchdown. Michigan got, like, a running touchdown at the end, like, busted out. But at the same time, like you said, like there's not many defenses in the Big Ten that are as good as Iowa's is. So we'll see. The big test, I think, now that they have to pass before Ohio State is going to be Penn State. Like outside of Penn State, I don't really see anybody else on that schedule that like should be that scary, because the Big Ten's really actually not looking as strong as we thought. Probably,
yeah.
Like, so,
definitely. With the Michigan State having the troubles they've had, that's kind of feels like it's tanked like that upper middle part of and Iowa's not very good. You know what I mean? So Wisconsin's lost. So I feel you. I do want to acknowledge Penn State gets another win, 17-7 against Northwestern. Pretty darn ugly, but hey, you get the job done in a conference game. A little bit want to see better from Penn State, but I do think they're a legit team. I think I have them inside my top 10 now. Right. Let's get into the Bama-Arkansas game, and we are so sharp because we said that we both wanted to be on Arkansas, but we decided not to pull the trigger because we know what Nick Saban could do, and look what he did. 49-26, and this was after Bryce Young goes out pretty early in this one.
Yeah, when Bryce Young went down, for whatever reason, I was like, this is why you don't, this is why you don't bet like a heavy favorite, in that case. But they still kind of did their thing. Like, I know at one point, like, Arkansas scored like a ton of unanswered points, and like
16,
it felt like, oh no, like they're gonna pull this off. Just it wasn't in the cards, unfortunately. Bama's just too good on defense for that, for that injury to matter, like as much as it did. But I don't know if Bryce Young's looking, good for this week or next week. Like, I don't know the update injury wise, but you got to hope he's good just because he's such a fun player to watch.
He seemed like he wasn't far off from playing even this week. He was still in his pads. Like he didn't require any kind of, it was just kind of a shoulder thing. He kind of hyperextended his arm a little bit.
Yeah. Cause I thought he played the next play.
He did. It was after a while that he realized like it was causing him some pain. And so probably precautionary as much as anything. And they've got A&M coming up this next week, but it's at home. It's a revenge game. And Jalen Milroe, the quarterback that came in for Bryce Young. And I don't know if you saw it, but there was a highlight going around TikTok. It was a guy that, this is how good Bama is. This is their backup. And it's that scramble that Milroe had that went like 70 yards. He looks like the fastest guy on the field. He's a freak. I remember him during recruitment. Didn't realize he was the backup quarterback there, though, I'll be honest. And he looks just fine. They'll smoke A&M at home without Bryce Young. So they may just give him another week off and go ahead and do what they got to do against our guy, the most fraudulent of all time, Jimbo Fisher.
Right.
He goes down again. I wanted to pull that score up. I think it was 42-24 that they lost.
Yeah, I thought it was like 44, 42.
42-24 at Mississippi State. So tough L for them. Got blown out. But we said on the pod, I thought that it was the right play. Mississippi State was favored by 4. And going into that, you might expect that game to be maybe a little closer on the spread or even A&M favored. So the fact that they were underdogs kind of tipped us off. We're getting sharper as we go. I'm telling you. I don't know if you saw any of that game or wanted to talk about it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I know I had a lot of statements about Texas A&M and Arkansas 2 weeks back. Hopefully we can just forget about that. But
here's the thing though. You cashed out at the perfect time.
I did.
You got your hog feast in just barely.
Yeah.
And then you were off. You were like, nope.
We got our takeoff, and then I'm out on Texas A&M. Like, I'll be the first one to say it. They are not good. They're gonna get smacked by Bama this week. Yep. That defense, for how much I talked them up, like entering the season, I think I talked them up in this Arkansas game that they played 2 weeks back. Like, they're not good. Alabama's gonna have no issues. Like, Will Rogers looked great. Like, which by the way, like Mississippi State, I'm not saying they're gonna like win the SEC, but like, dude, like they're looking great. You never know. Like when you got a quarterback like Will Rogers, you look great.
Their issue is always going to just be that they play in the West, and when you play in the West, you got somebody tough every week,
right?
And so you never know. But yeah, Mississippi State was a team a lot of people had kind of as like a dark horse, but they didn't really know where to put them because you can't sit here and say that they're going to beat Bama. You know what I mean? Like you can't. That can't be your take going into the year. It's just you need like a point spread. You need to say like, let me get Mississippi State plus the 17.5 or whatever going into the season. That makes sense. But like I said, they were trendy, but never really gonna beat Bama, I don't think. But they're good. Will Rogers is playing well. I did want to get in. We had a top 10 matchup that ended up being it was okay. It wasn't as exciting as maybe you want, but the defenses played very well. This is NC State and Clemson. Clemson winning in Death Valley 30-20.
Yep.
Thought that defense just made a statement, man. There wasn't anything insane that Clemson did. They played just good. DJU, he had 73 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns, so he's essentially a running back that throws it sometimes. But maybe that's what, it works for you. In college, you can kind of get away with stuff like that. Yeah. Now, we'll see when they play better teams like Florida State or, they already played Wake, but, that and the ACC is a little bit weak, but there'll be a test along the way somewhere that we'll see Clemson. We'll see what they got. Did want to get into that USC smokes Arizona State 42-25.
Yep.
Like we said, they're back. That was the Lincoln Riley bounce back game.
Oh, yeah. I think that USC 2 weeks ago, everybody saw that game against Oregon State, and they're like, well, whatever, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then they probably, like you said, had to make a statement. Curious to see how dangerous they'll be as the year goes on. Like, are they going to be one of those teams that just gets better and better with each week, and by the end of the year, they're finally kind of hitting that peak that we talked about? We'll see. But they're going to contend. We knew they would, but we just probably had our doubts 2 weeks ago against Oregon State,
And we had reason to,
Right,
we had
right.
reason to. But, let's talk about a Big 12 game. Oklahoma State, Baylor. Oklahoma State pulls it off 36-25. I'm kicking myself, man, because I was one of the first ones in the offseason that looked at Oklahoma State and said, okay, they're due to fall off. You lose guys like Rodrigo on the back end. They lost some dudes on the front. They had a good D-line going in, but everything behind that kind of was looked like it was going to be a lot of replacing to do. But Oklahoma State, man, they look great. I saw something that I think they're 18-2 in their last 20 or something like that. I mean, they're just a machine right now. They're playing great football, very confident. Love what we're seeing from the offense, just not turning the ball over, and they can score at times. They like to go up tempo. It's a typical college move. If you can get them on that if you can mess them up on that first down, you're going to probably force a punt. But if they pick up a quick first down and they're going fast down the field, you might be in trouble. Oklahoma State, I think, is a team to watch going forward. I think I had them number 7 in my poll this week. Yeah. We will see. Did you have any thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how much we said it was going to be a big standings one, both obviously for their CFP standings, but also for Big 12, obviously. And I think they really kind of showed themselves and showed what they're all about. It's hard not to be excited about them right now, and it's hard to not think, like, for me, who, I'm not necessarily like a Big 12 guy, but for me, I'm watching them and I'm like, nobody's necessarily shown me as much in the Big 12 as they have. I mean, we could say Kansas, but Kansas ain't winning the Big 12. At least I don't think. Yeah. Hey, I could be wrong. So. Big matchup with Kansas. Coming up this week. I think they're gonna play TCU this week, so we'll see.
Huge,
but at the same time, nobody's shown me as much as Oklahoma State shown me. So if I had to make a statement right now of who I think would win the Big 12, I don't know who else I would answer but Oklahoma State. And I know that probably that stinks because as an OU guy, you're but no, they look great. Spencer Sanders kind of doing his thing. I mean, we'll see what happens, man. But a lot of games left to be played though. And we said TCU's looking good. Kansas is looking good. OU could upset them. There's games they got to do their rest of the schedule here. So
yeah, no doubt. A lot of football left. We got a couple I want to get in a little bit quicker. Purdue upsets Minnesota in Minnesota 20-10. Kind of a couple ugly plays there for Minnesota. Hurts a little bit, but Purdue, man, just a couple plays go differently, and they're maybe 5-0, ranked very highly. They've been in every game. We might have to look at them. I know our guy Aiden O'Connell's back and feeling better, so we'll see if that offense keeps picking it up. I like watching Purdue. I love Purdue games, and Purdue will have some random home game here coming up on Thursday night at Purdue, and it'll be an absolute all-out scene. The fans and everything. So
they're pesky, man.
Pesky Purdue.
Pesky Purdue, just like the Jags, man. So one of my friends was kind of talking with me, and he's like, "Dude, I didn't realize Purdue was so good." And I'm like, when you really think about it, their loss to Penn State was not a bad loss. Now, when you're looking at how good Penn State's played, and I said they probably should have won that game. They just didn't close that game out. They just didn't. They needed to kill clock. They were pretty conservative, whatever. But I was like, if they had that win over Penn State right now, like we might be looking at Purdue like way, way different. So,
Right.
Yeah,
they've played in a bunch of close ones so far this year, so who knows? That game against Penn State and then that game against Syracuse, obviously being a 3-point game, and they're 5-0. Who knows?
Yeah.
Could have been a different season. Georgia Tech upset Pittsburgh. I just wanted to say that because it's kind of funny. Georgia Tech is one of my worst teams on the season, and they won an ACC game against a ranked foe. They're not ranked anymore, but they were ranked. Wake Forest, Florida State, though, for the ACC. Wake Forest beats Florida State in Florida State Stadium. I can't think of the name. I think it's Doak Campbell. 31-21. Wake Forest comes away with a win. Our guy, Sam Hartman, finding a way, and I don't even think that was like his greatest game ever.
No.
There was a lot of mistakes in this one, but man, they just had enough offense in the end. Hold off Florida State. I was actually more impressed with Wake's defense because I think Florida State has a somewhat decent offense, especially when Jordan Travis is playing. But man, they found a way to get stops, found a way to get a turnover or two here or there, and bam, 31-21. Good win for Wake Forest. Good bounce back win.
Yeah, I was kind of proud of the Demon Deacons because, they easily could have taken that loss to Clemson, in overtime, a game that, like, they pull that off. Suddenly, like, their ACC, title hopes are, like, way, way, way different. But they didn't let it kind of become a hangover game where they come out and they just lay an egg this week. They showed up this week. They did exactly what they needed to do. You're right, that defense showed up. And, man, like, they're going to be dangerous. Like, we'll see what they can do. I still think there's really, really good chances that they win 10 games, maybe 11 games, something, and get to a real good bowl. Like they're looking great, man.
Yeah, I like what I see from them. A couple last ones before we move on to the NFL. Kansas State, Texas Tech. We kind of called that the letdown bowl. Both teams coming off huge upset wins. Kansas State wins at home though, 37-28. Good showing from their offense, especially late in that game. Scored 17 in the fourth quarter to pull that one off. Still impressed with Texas Tech, though. I think they're going to be better than people kind of had them gauged for. But the Big 12's tough, man. K-State picking up a big one. Now they're 2-0 in the Big 12. And if they didn't lay that stinker the week before OU, man, they're sitting there 5-0. They're ranked this week, but who knows what number they could have been if they'd have won that one.
Oh, 100%. And once again, like you said, a lot of really good Big 12 teams right now. It makes me scared because it makes me wonder, like, the Big 12 might not be able to get anybody into the CFP just because they're all going to beat the snot out of each other right now.
Cannibalize ourselves.
There's going to be a bunch of like upsets. All it takes is like one upset where, like, let's just say Kansas State takes off Oklahoma, or whatever the case, or Baylor or something like that, where all it takes is 1-2 losses and you're out. Like, unless you're a one-loss team, even still a one-loss Big 12 team still may not be able to find it in. So we'll see what happens.
Just depends on the way it breaks. Yeah, you're right. I mean, we'll have the SEC champion and the one-loss SEC runner-up or whatever. You can't leave them out. So,
and then Ohio State probably.
Exactly. There's three, like, basically guaranteed.
Becomes a big debate for 4.
Exactly. And that's why they do it. I get it. But I'm excited for the expansion to 12 coming up.
Me too.
The last one I want to get in real quick, and then you can pick one if we haven't talked about it that you want to bring up. I had the under in Navy Air Force. The total was like 36 or something. The game finished 13-10. Air Force wins at home. We respect our troops. We do. We're not going to say anything bad about them, but that was such an easy under that I just had to throw that in there. It wasn't an interesting game or one you really wanted to watch, but 13-10. I was scared because Air Force, I said the way we lose it is Air Force just scores a million points. And they started the first quarter 10-0, like bang out the gate. And I was like, uh-oh. And then I noticed I wouldn't get any notifications on my phone for a long time. And I looked and it was like, 3-10 at the half or whatever. And then we didn't even score in the third quarter. So pretty much a no sweat under there for me. But did you have anything on college football before we move on?
Yeah, one last one we'll hit on just because I cashed a bet on it, and I think it will actually end up being a game that like matters and a team that matters, and that's Utah just clean house on Oregon State. And we said how impressed we were with Oregon State, against USC 2 weeks back. Now, granted, like that game was, Oregon State was at home, like a much different environment. But the same thing I said going into that bet is like my reasoning is just that I was saying Utah lost that game to Florida and it hurt them so much because outside of that game, they have absolutely like demolished every single person they played. And they did the same thing in this game where like they were up 21-13 at half. It felt like, well, maybe Oregon State keeps this one close. And then they outscore them 21-3 in the second half, and they win 42-16. Like, if we're saying how good Oregon State's defense looked 2 weeks ago against USC, who's supposed to be one of the best offenses in the nation and everything, Oregon just absolutely put the beat down on them. Oregon or Utah, I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm getting my words mixed up a little here. But, yeah, Utah right now, they're looking like, to me, if they win that game against Florida – suddenly, like this would probably be the team I'd be saying. Like, I think they win the Pac-12 right now, just based on what I've seen.
Too.
Just because they're just absolutely laying it on everybody. And what's unfortunate is they might end up going on to win the Pac-12, and there's still maybe another team that like gets in over them at like that 4 slot. Like we said, a lot of one-loss teams. I'd like to believe that like if they keep putting up like this kind of a resume where you're just blowing out teams, that they'd get it, but they don't have much breathing room right now, and maybe that's part of the reason they're blowing out teams is like the pressure is like right on their neck right now.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but I've been super impressed by them, and I think Cam Rising's just he's really showed up. I like it, man.
Yeah, I did want to get in that their schedule goes like this: they're at UCLA next week, then they have USC at home. And then a few weeks after that, they're at Oregon before the season's over. So they got a tough stretch in the schedule, but they're just such a physical team that I'll always kind of go for them in those games. I can't wait for them to play USC. I'm going to be all over Utah money line Utah may be favored in that one. Honestly, I don't know how that'll go.
Yep.
All right. Well, we got our Utah love in for the episode, so that's always good.
There you go.
I want to quickly talk about the sponsor of this podcast, the BetCoda Sportsbook. BetCoda Sportsbook is a South Dakota-owned and operated sportsbook located in the Midnight Star Casino in Deadwood, South Dakota, serving customers in the state. As you enter the Midnight Star, you are swept into the past with the grand staircase, stunning woodwork, and the elegance of the chandelier. They offer the best lines in Deadwood, so stop by and mention the Coda Sports Gambling Network to receive a free BetCoda t-shirt. Play responsibly. Must be 21 years or older to wager. Gambling problems or concerns? Call 1-800-522-4700. Beast, let's talk a little NFL football. My Dallas Cowboys, they just keep winning. I'm not going to apologize for the 3-1 Dallas Cowboys right now. Put out a tweet that I think they can win. I think they win the NFC East. I really do. We saw the pesky Jags give the Eagles a tough time. Now, that was a great win for them.
Yep.
Eagles coming back big time against the Jags, and we didn't even end up covering. Jags had like a 14-0 lead, and we didn't even cover the +7 or whatever it was, 6.5. So the Eagles are good. I acknowledge the Eagles are good. I'm not hating on them. The Cowboys are just finding a way, and it's mostly through their defense right now. They beat the Commanders 25-10. Of course, the Commanders aren't a great test, and obviously part of my tweet's a little bit trolly, obviously, but at the same time, it'd be great to have that take out there when and if it does happen. Dak comes back soon. Don't know when yet, but Cooper Rush, 4-0 in the NFL. He's the first Cowboy to ever start his career 4-0 as a starter.
Hey, you got to like what you're seeing out of, I don't know if you want to call him Andy Dalton Jr. Like
yeah,
I say,
pretty much.
The Red Rocket, kind of. But I know I'm excited. That was a guy that like I watched more in college than most people.
Yeah.
Just because
Central
a lot of
Michigan.
my friends were going to Central Michigan, and like I would just go to Central versus Western. Like that was a rivalry for them and stuff. So I would always kind of like tune in, and I always knew who this Cooper Rush guy was because he was a very good MAC quarterback. But I am like baffled at like how good he's actually been in a backup role, and like I thought they were kind of dead to rights when he came in like to fill in for Dak.
Me too.
And I can't say he's been outstanding, but he's a game manager. And when you have the defense that the Cowboys, have, and you got a pretty good running game, Pollard and Zeke, this is a solid duo. They're making it happen. Like you can't, like you said, you have no excuse, like, or you have no reason to apologize, I should say, I guess is what I'm getting at. Like they're winning these games legit. Like they didn't win by like a field goal this week. They dominated that game from start to finish. So
Thank you for validating that for me. That's great.
No, they're playing good ball, man.
They are.
They
are. Like as much as it's a homer take for me, there's a little legitimacy to it too. I kind of skipped ahead. We didn't mention that Bengals Dolphins happened Thursday night. The Bengals win 27-15. There's a couple things we need to hit on in this game. First being that me and you both had Bengals, what was it, -3.5 or something. easy cover, but it's because Tua, I'm going to say, gets his second concussion in back-to-back weeks and on a short week. I really think he had a concussion, and I thought we might talk about this. Them passing that off as a back injury, and now I think like the lead physician for the Bengals is fired.
Yeah.
Or for the Dolphins rather, is fired. What a mess. I mean,
oh, it's 100% a mess. And, it feels like one of those situations where this is, I feel like, why the NFL, I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know all the rules for the NFL, but I feel like this is why the NFL uses these third-party neuroscientists or neurosurgeons. But it's because of this that, they don't want to probably feel as accountable, and maybe, regulations need to be changed where, this guy, I know he got fired, but like there needs to be a more accountability from probably coaches. Like they have training staff, coaches, and these trainers, like 100%, these trainers, they are aware of like what concussions are and, what symptoms are. And they probably could have said something as well. Maybe the coaches maybe should have said something as like, hey, we're going from a Sunday to a Thursday game. Like, I'm not going to make the statement that like this is, like they're just using a cop out that this neurosurgeon cleared him. But it's not good that, he got cleared in that situation and that nobody said anything between coaches, between players around him. Part of it's on Tua, sure. But, a lot of people are accountable.
I don't want to blame Tua too much just because I know he's just competitive and he doesn't know much about concussions. I really think, and I try to look it up, and I didn't really see much of a history with him and concussions. So he may not know that much. And especially if he convinced himself that it was just a back injury the week before, maybe he thought, oh, I'm fine then, because they said it was a back injury. So even though I was seeing stars for 20 minutes, maybe I was fine.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not going to go too deep into, like, a medical take. Like I said, like, there's a lot of people accountable, responsibilities, so I won't go, like, I'm not trying to make any bold statement. The only statement I think that I have on it, and I know, like, it's very entertaining for us to have Thursday night football, but in situations like this, it makes you think about, like, if he had Sunday to Sunday, like, maybe somebody would have stepped up, or, like, maybe they would have had to do more, testing or something. Maybe he would have shown more symptoms later in the week, like, I don't know, but it feels like realistically, not just for concussions, it could be for an ankle injury. It could be for anything. Like it might not necessarily be like the safest thing possible to have like such a contact sport doing like literally Sunday to Thursday,
Yeah, that's a tough turnaround. And guys have complained about it for years. And the other thing I wanted to get in is because of the hurricane, the Dolphins actually traveled there a day early. So they didn't even get the full time, with the training staff and their full all that stuff. So a wild result on Thursday night. The Bengals uniforms, though, we got to hit on those. The whites, they're awesome.
Yeah, kind of like a zebra. I like it.
Yeah,
I
saw you said zebra. And honestly, that downgraded it for me a little bit because before that, it was just like a snow tiger or whatever they're called. And I was like, this is kind of sick. But yeah, that I don't like that. Don't say that. Don't say that. I want to talk about the London game, Vikings Saints. Me and you, I tailed your under. Vikings pull it off 28-25. Both teams, there was a couple fluky, like long TDs that was kind of the difference for us, but I don't think we were far off. But I didn't know if you had any takes about that game in general.
No, not necessarily. That was a game where once I found out that Jameis Winston wasn't playing, I was super excited about the under. I'm like, oh yeah, this one's going under. But this Vikings defense kind of had some issues. Like you said, there were some fluky plays. Like I won't act like they played awful because like the Lions were 10 times worse. But like the Vikings defense probably should have played a lot better. Like that should not have been that close of a game, in my opinion. If we're saying that like the Vikings are this like potential wild card team, like that's a game that you got to kind of clean up, like 21-10 or something like that. If you're, or you know what I mean? Like you should be winning that by more. And I know that probably frustrates like everybody that's a Vikings fan. I'm not trying to like say the Vikings are that bad, but that's a game they should have won by more.
Yeah.
But hey, they snuck away with the win. Sometimes that happens. You just take the W and you roll,
It's all you can do. I heard you bring it up, so we're going to talk about it. Lions, Seahawks. Seahawks win that one 48-45. #Lions overs. I think it's an auto tail now. I don't know if you agree or disagree to that. You don't really have to say right now. Just think about it. What I think I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to try to convince you that this was actually a fine result for the Lions. Okay. So now the Lions are 1-3, right? Tough start. You had some winnable games out in front of you, but you got to see that they started themselves in a massive hole. Jared Goff did not have his best game, although his stats in the end were actually really good because they were trying to come from behind the whole time. He had a pick or two that weren't pretty, but this Lion team has grit. What we've got to do now, we've got to figure the defense out. Is Aaron Glenn still the DC? Because I think it's time for him to go. We had that conversation. But I think the Lions are still okay, man. They're 1-3, but things can change. How are we feeling?
Yeah, it's frustrating just because the last 2 weeks changed everything because they probably should have won that game against the Vikings. Like I said, Vikings fans can be frustrated and they can say, oh, we threw this touchdown, whatever. Like, Lions just didn't close that game out. Like, if they were a winning franchise and a winning, with a winning coach that knew what he was doing, like, they closed that game out in the correct way. That picks up, a win for you. Then you're sitting 2-1 entering this game. You should win this game against the Seahawks. Like, they could have been 3-1 in this game, entering the bye week, and then, they play the Patriots without Mac Jones. You could have been sitting 4-1 through 5 games in a much, much, much different situation. But that's not what happened, and they're just not executing. Like I said, I felt like the last 2 games were winnable games. Hey, maybe I'll look back on it at the end of the season when the Lions don't make the playoffs, and I'm like, oh, this really helped our draft position. Like, so glad they lost. But I don't want to think about it like that because I'd like to think that my team should be 4-1 after this Patriots game. But whatever, man. Like I said, they're not executing, and that's probably like people are kind of calling for Dan Campbell a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm ready for that because the team has looked good. But defensively right now, this is they've allowed the most points in the NFL, but I think it might be like the most points through 4 weeks of like NFL history or something like I read. Yeah, I mean, like it's really bad. I think it might be something like that. Maybe I'm like thinking of a different stat. But I believe it's that. And I
probably
know Lions,
about right. Lions overs, man.
Right. And the Lions offense is like number 1 in the NFL right now in scoring. Now, granted, a lot of that was because last week we had to be, but dude, like, just if we even had like Dan Orlovsky made a great point today. He said if the Lions just had a bad defense, they could probably be 3-1. But it's not bad. It's like horrific. It's so bad.
Historically bad.
Literally, it's so bad, dude. It reminds me of Matt Patricia.
Yeah, that's no good. So I hope they keep giving Dan Campbell a chance because I think he could be the guy for the job. Just got to give him some time. I don't know about his defensive coordinator right now. That's kind of the biggest issue. All right. Got to give myself a chance to kind of pat myself on the back for this one. Titans beat the Colts 27-14.
Yeah, great look.
It was a great look. It was crazy because it kept getting closer and closer. So we opened it up 14-0 lead. I think maybe it was even 17-0 at one point. And then it just got closer from there basically until the end of the game. But the Titans find a way to win a pretty crucial game in the AFC South or North. South. Yeah, South. Sorry. I don't know what I'm doing with my conferences and divisions lately are just, there's so much football going on. That's the problem.
It's a lot to remember.
Our pesky Jags nearly did it. 21-29. They go down to the Eagles in Philly. We had Eagles plus 6.5. Started off 14-0. I'm like, heck yeah. Then the Eagles score 20 unanswered. And I'm like, okay, but we're still kind of within the number. And then Eagles, that offense can really move the ball. It was raining sideways the whole game, and that offense still moves the ball. It'll be a very fun matchup when they eventually do face the Cowboys 2 times this year. I'm going to be in demon mode for that whole game. I can promise you that. Both of them.
Right.
Looks like the first one is not this next week, but
2
the
weeks
week after.
Yeah. Yep.
And then the next one is like the third to last game of the season, and that one's in Dallas. So we should have some fireworks between those 2 teams. The Cowboys have kind of had the Eagles numbered lately, but we'll see.
Yeah. No, I'm excited.
We got to talk about Jet Steelers for a number of reasons. One of them being our guy Kenny Pickett did come to play. I said that it could be him, and you said, yeah, I know you were on the Steelers. This was a tough loss. Zach Wilson did he get knocked out of the game for part of it and then came back in, or am I just making that up?
I don't think he was too banged up. He might have missed some plays.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to watch all of it. I was trying to tune in as much as I could on my little streaming apps, like, whatever. Like FBI, don't watch this. But yeah, no, I mean, there you go. But no, I mean, that was a game where Steelers looked great, and then I felt like at worst we were going to push on +3, and then they just didn't close it out. Like Kenny Pickett could have had a better first game, but he had some rushing touchdowns. Like I'm excited to see what he does. I wish he had like 3 games experience prior to this one because maybe he would have won it. But for a first game, like I've seen a lot worse.
And coming in during the game too is a whole different thing because you got to imagine he's not getting a ton of number 1 snaps with the starters.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be an interesting week to watch the Steelers. I don't know who they've got on deck, but we'll definitely be talking about that one because if our guy Kenny Pickett's out there, I didn't love necessarily anything he did throwing the ball, but his moxie is there. You know what I mean? Like he's like that guy, like a Baker Mayfield type. And I hate to use that name because Baker just unfortunately stinks as an OU fan. He has lost his swag a little bit, but that's right now what this young guy, Kenny Pickett, has for the Steelers. Cool story, being a Pitt player right there locally in town.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a great matchup we had, though. Ravens-Bills. We were talking about this one. We didn't know which side of this we wanted to be on. It looked like the Ravens were going to run away with it early. They had Josh Allen a little bit rattled, but the Bills defense shut the Ravens out second half. Bills win at 23-20. Unreal.
Yeah. I mean, they had the spread perfect. I want to say it was +3. And we had the conversation where I said there were so many games this week that like I was looking at that I wanted to take that I just kind of held off on. Like it wouldn't have mattered because I was going to take Ravens +3. But I'm glad because like it didn't matter on like the slate or as far as like win-loss. But I would have been sweating that out so bad, like with how that second half went. So maybe it kind of saved me a couple of years of my life, a couple gray hairs. I don't know. But Ravens look great. Like I still have to give them credit. Like obviously the Bills, good for them, pulling off W's, tough, place to play, obviously going to Baltimore. But at the same time, Ravens, like that's not a bad loss. Like, you know what I mean? Like you can't be upset about that. Like a 3-point loss to the Buffalo Bills, like which is everybody's Super Bowl favorite.
Right. And you had them beat for part of the game. I guess that's really the side where you'd be upset is, man, look at this lead we had that we blew. But man, yeah, like you said, Super Bowl favorites. And it's the Bills coming off a loss too. This isn't one where you like caught them maybe overlooking you a little bit because they haven't played anyone yet or whatever the case may be. But the Bills are battle tested and came away with a good win there. I was happy for my guy Meerkat. I texted him after the game. He was about as fired up as I've ever seen him. So that's always fun when you get a fired up Meerkat. That. Yeah, we'll have to have him on again soon. Maybe do a pick show with him because he's a beast. Okay, as an OU fan, I just got to get this one in. It was a bit of a sicko game, but the Cardinals beat the Panthers 26-16. This was a OU battle. Kyler Murray getting his revenge against Baker Mayfield. Obviously, Baker Mayfield beat Kyler out back in the day. Sort of. I mean, Baker was already the starter when Kyler came into town. He sat out, waited for Baker to leave, had a great year, won the Heisman, was the number 1 overall pick. They've got this offense going, man. I mean, it took a while. That first quarter and first half, even, they only had 3 points. But after that, figuring it out. Defense is playing better. We got to talk about J.J. Watt. Like, did you see any of that? Like, he had some kind of a heart issue, and they had to like restart his heart to get it on rhythm. And he's out there playing. I saw a tweet, and maybe I could find a screenshot of it, but it said J.J. Watt out here playing for the Cardinals, and it was a caption. It was a picture of a kid that was like, it said like he's willing to risk his life for JV. So because it's the Cardinals, they don't have a great record so far. J.J. Watt just had his heart like worked on, and he's out there playing, but they won. So
so he had AFib, which is atrial fibrillation, and so it's like it's not a normal heart rhythm. Obviously, it's something that I wouldn't necessarily say like it was life threatening at the time, but like if you don't get it treated, like it's gonna be something that could be. And it could, lead to a higher chance of a stroke, all kinds of stuff. Okay. Without getting like too deep medically.
Weeds.
We're just getting a little breakdown. You guys come for the football talk, get a little medical talk. But yeah, no. So I mean, so you got to go in, and so he went in, and they kind of did the shock, and which it worked clearly because he got cleared for the game, and he was good, prayers up for the guy. Hopefully he doesn't have any more issues as far as like, irregular rhythms, but crazy story because typically like your people that are having irregular heart rhythms aren't necessarily pro NFL players. You know what I mean?
Great
So,
athletes. Yeah.
yeah, so kind of a crazy situation. Kind of just hope it was one of those fluke things. You know what I mean? We hear about all kinds of stuff going on. But good on him too, though, that he went in to get treated.
Yeah.
Because I think
smart.
oftentimes, like any of us, we have something going on and we're like, yeah, well, I'm gonna wait until it gets really bad. You know what I mean?
Take
Like,
care of itself if it doesn't.
yeah.
then
Oh,
yeah.
I'll just kind of, I'll just drink some hot tea or something. Like people do all kinds of wild like remedies and stuff. But good for him. I'm glad he was able to play. Glad it hasn't created a bigger issue, and hopefully it doesn't. But like, you're right, from an actual like outsider standpoint of like looking in, like what, like
Yeah.
crazy, just because of this guy is,
Right. Being an older player and everything, it's just kind of crazy story. I wanted to hit on a couple games we've got left. I'm going to quick hit Raiders and Broncos. Raiders win at home 32-23, getting their first win on the year. Just wanted to get that in for a shout out to B-Russ. Nothing too special about this game. I don't know what the Broncos are, and the Raiders, they can beat anybody, but also they're 1-3. So it's kind of hard to say too much about them. Let's talk about Patriots Packers, because the Packers win in overtime 27-24. It took everything they had. I mean, the Patriots were right on the doorstep of winning this one, but the Patriots fall to 1-3. What'd you think about that one?
I thought the Patriots had opportunities to win that game in overtime. Obviously, like, so they had the stop right off the bat, and they got the ball back on like the 50. I want to say they started on like maybe their own 48 or like their own 50. Like, don't quote me on that, but it was right around the 50. And Matt Patricia's offense, or whoever the heck's running play calls over there in New England, like Belichick and them, man, they just went really conservative. I didn't really feel like they were kind of going for the throat. And I get it. You have Bailey Zappi, your third string quarterback.
Yes, Bailey Zappi played a lot of this game.
He did. And we have to give our credit to Bailey Zappi as far as like the rookie quarterbacks go. Like, that was not an easy spot to come in, and he played good against a pretty good Packers defense.
I think I saw that he was the first rookie quarterback to have a passing touchdown this year. Could be wrong.
Might be when you really start looking down like the list, because like Corral's not playing, and Willis isn't playing.
Right, and we just saw for the first time Pickett play, and he only had rushing touchdowns. So I think he was the first one with the passing touchdown. Shout out Bailey Zappi, Western Kentucky alum.
There you go, man. He played pretty good. Like, I was impressed for a guy that hasn't seen any snaps all year. Like, he did pretty good. And I felt like I said, I felt like they probably should have been the way I think I described it in the group chat was, I said they had a chance to go for the jugular with a butcher knife, and they brought out your plastic butter knife that you get in like, your Outback Steakhouse takeout order. You know what I mean? Like, they had an opportunity to go for the jugular, and they just passed up on it. They just were like, well, whatever, we're going to see what we can do. Yeah. And they could have pulled that win off, in my opinion, but they didn't want it. And they
covered. They covered the 10-point spread.
They did.
Congratulations to the Patriots. So. Last game we're going to talk about, because Monday Night Football is still going on. The score right now as we record, 49ers are up 14-9, and 49ers have first and goal at the 8. So we'll see what happens with that game. But we got to talk about the Sunday night game that went down. Chiefs, Bucks. I know both you and me ended up being on the Buccaneers Sunday night, and the Chiefs looked unstoppable. They win 41-31, and a lot of that was kind of the Buccaneers coming back, and it was really kind of never within reach, but they were just scoring. The over was the play, and I did want to get in that. I guess the public won big this weekend. Didn't really see that, but I guess the public money won a lot this weekend, so shout out to the public. But yeah, this one went way over, and the Chiefs win big, 41-31. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I mean, I was so wrong on this game between Buccaneers. A couple people asked me between texts and replies on Twitter, just like, oh, what do you think about the total? And I'm like, oh, I would take the under. Like, this game goes under. I thought it'd be a defensive battle. Nope, I was completely wrong. It was just one of those games where I had everything wrong. But, like, the public was very right on it, because the public loved the over, and the public loved the Chiefs. So, like, give them credit. Like, that doesn't necessarily happen a ton on Sunday Night Football, but I was wrong. I think that Tom Brady, as good as he is, he was not the better quarterback in this matchup, and it wasn't even close. Like, I think I keep wanting to think, like, oh, Brady can keep up with these young, like, guys like Rodgers and keep up with, Mahomes, but he kept up with Rodgers last week, I guess. That was a close game, but this week, Mahomes, man, he just absolutely lit him up. Like, that was a showcase on like quarterback, you know.
It was, and this was the classic. I think we talked about it before we started recording, but this is the classic like Chiefs get right game where
Yeah.
you go into it thinking the Chiefs just lost to Indianapolis. I mean, come on. And then this happens. They beat one of the Super Bowl favorites. Don't sleep on the Chiefs. They're back. Mahomes looks amazing.
Yep.
He's doing all the sidearm little like flicks.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's doing his flips and he's doing his little jog down, you know.
Man. We need Patrick Mahomes to keep winning strictly so we can have more of his brother on TV and TikTok
so we can
and
cringe.
I don't know how he's basically been bullied off of most every platform, but that guy's still going at it. So love to see it. But I guess that wraps us up for the NFL slate. I don't know if you had any final thoughts before we get into one big take and wrap the show up.
No, I don't got anything. I'm excited for this next week just because I think both of us didn't have our best week in NFL. Same thing with college.
It still wasn't horrible, though. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if that's a bad week for us, we're chilling hard.
Oh, 100%. So just know that, you know, me and PG were coming this week, guys. Like,
we're
big
seeing
week
the
ahead.
board. We're seeing the board very well. Let's get into one big take, and what this is basically just us getting off our big takeaway from the weekend. Beast, do you want to lead it off like always, or you want me to go first? Because I got one.
You can lead it off, man. Let's hear it.
Let's lead it off, and this is something I've said earlier this year, and it's not the hottest take. I recognize that, but Bama is going to win the national championship. I think this is still potentially one of their best teams ever. They've had some shaky results, specifically with Texas. But this week going into Arkansas and not just covering the spread, but doing it easily with your backup quarterback, that's what I needed to see. The team stepped up. The only thing that scares me and ever will scare me about Bama is that Bill O'Brien is the offensive coordinator, and that guy has loser blood. But at the same time, man, they've got so much talent on this offense, so much on defense, obviously. They've got to get Will Anderson kind of back locked in. He's, I think, not having his best year ever. He's a little frustrated, but as soon as you get that guy locked in, that defense becomes elite. And I think they've got what it takes to beat Georgia. So they lead off at the 1 seed. They get to play a 4 seed, obviously, in the first round. That's the quote unquote easiest road to the national championship. And I think they do it. I think they're SEC champs. I think they finished the year undefeated, national champions. The Alabama Crimson Tide, not the hottest take ever with Coach Saban there, but I think this team's got what it takes. They've already kind of passed those hurdles that would have tripped lesser teams up. I like Bama this year.
No, I like it a lot. I think especially with how much struggles we're seeing with, you know, everybody else that's supposed to be a contender, including Georgia. They're just not doing it right now.
Two bad weeks in a row for Georgia. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I like that a lot. I'm going to go to the Big 12, our highly talked conference here. And my big take is going to be that TCU is the team that really nobody's talking about enough. You know, I mean, seriously, the Frogs are looking great, man. Yeah, well, the Horned Frogs are looking great. So yeah, so it makes you feel better about that loss to Oklahoma because this is a TCU team that, like, Oklahoma's not the only one that's given up a lot of points. They've had 38 TCU's had 38 plus points in every single game this year. Max Duggan finally putting it all together. Like I said, not only is he throwing the ball all over the place, he looked awesome on the ground last week. He busted out 2 rushing touchdowns. He looks outstanding. I think that their upcoming schedule plays out pretty well too. So they're going to go to Kansas this week, but I think that they clean the house in Kansas. Like, I'm not worried about that game. They're 7-point favorites right now. So I think that, like, that just shows that Vegas knows that they're the better team in this.
Then barring a letdown. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, like, hopefully they clean up in that matchup, but they're going to get Oklahoma State at home the next week. Then they're going to get Kansas State at home the next week.
Love it.
After that, like, they have a couple tough road games. They're going to play at Texas and at Baylor. But, like, they should beat West Virginia. They should beat Texas Tech. They should beat Texas, if I'm being honest with you. Like, if I'm looking on paper right now, they're probably the better team.
Agreed.
Baylor is probably going to be real tough, too. Obviously,
the rivalry game as well.
Like, the home game against Oklahoma State, too, like, they could drop. I'm not saying they can't, but I feel like this was a team that, like, some people had them as a dark horse, you know, entering the season on the Big 12. But, like, personally, like, I think they might be able to, like, run the table if the things line up right. Now, maybe I'm just overhyping a team that looks good through 5 games and we're not actually, through 4 games, I should say. And they're not actually as good. But right now, like, I actually think they might be able to do it based on, like, schedule. But we'll see.
I like it. I did want to get in that their offensive coordinator is Garrett Riley, who's Lincoln Riley's little brother. So you got to think if he's anything like his brother, he knows offense very well, and he's got this offense moving. Love what Duggan's been doing, but that does make me feel a little bit better about that OU loss. Great recap show, man. I thought we killed it. We love everybody out there. Be sure to subscribe, thumbs up the video, or if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, rate us 5 stars. It helps us a bunch. We appreciate you guys so much, and we will see you guys Friday morning with our picks. See you soon. Peace.
Peace out.